I still remember the exact shade of blue on our bedroom walls the morning everything fell apart. It wasn't the shocking movie scene discovery you'd expect. No lipstick on collars or mysterious hotel receipts. No, my husband's betrayal revealed itself in the most ordinary moment, on the most ordinary Tuesday, while I was doing the most ordinary thing, folding his laundry. Have you ever had that feeling when something so familiar suddenly becomes foreign? When the person sleeping next to you for 8 years suddenly becomes a stranger? That's what happened when I picked up David's grey Northwestern hoodie, the one he'd had since college, the one I'd tried to throw away a dozen times because it was falling apart at the seams. I was about to toss it in the mend later pile when something fell out of the pocket. A receipt. Just a simple piece of paper from a restaurant called Marigold. Nothing suspicious about a lunch receipt, right? Except, except, I knew Marigold. It was that new upscale place downtown, the one with the 2-month waiting list, the one where you need to book reservations way in advance. The one David said was pretentious and overpriced when I mentioned wanting to go there for our anniversary. The timestamp showed 1:24 p.m. on a Wednesday, 3 weeks ago, when David was supposedly at his quarterly budget meeting, the one he complained about for days because it always ran through lunch. My hands started trembling as I noticed the details. 2 glasses of wine, 2 entrees, a shared dessert. But the thing that made my stomach drop, the detail that changed everything, was the little heart drawn next to the server's signature at the bottom. I later learned that's just how the waitress signs all her receipts. Ironic, isn't it? How something so meaningless could be the thread that unraveled my entire life. I stood there, frozen, holding this stupid piece of paper, while 8 years of memories suddenly rearranged themselves in my mind. The late nights at work, the business trips that got extended, the new cologne he started wearing 6 months ago that was on sale, the sudden interest in getting in shape. The password changed on his phone because of work security protocols. All those tiny moments I'd dismissed, they snapped into focus like pieces of a puzzle I never wanted to complete. I should have confronted him immediately. That's what a stronger woman would have done, right? Instead, I did something I'm not proud of, something I'd never done before in our relationship. I waited until he was in the shower and I checked his phone. Now, I need to pause here and tell you, I'm not that person. I've always believed in privacy, in trust. David and I used to joke about couples who checked each other's phones. That's the beginning of the end, he'd say. And I'd agree, feeling superior and secure in our honest relationship. Yet there I was, hands shaking, heart pounding, typing in his birthday, the password he'd used for everything since college. It didn't work. I tried our anniversary. Nothing. With growing desperation, I tried the date we moved into our house. Still locked. As a last attempt, I tried today's date, and the phone unlocked. Who changes their password to the current date? Someone who changes it frequently, that's who. Someone with something to hide. The messages were right there in his text history. No clever hiding, no secret apps. Just her name, Rachel, with a little yellow heart emoji next to it. I scrolled up, my vision blurring with each swipe, reading snippets of a relationship that had clearly been going on for months. Miss you already. Last night was perfect. Can't wait to see you again. And then I saw it, a photo of them together, at Marigold, her head resting on his shoulder, his arm around her waist, both smiling like they'd just discovered happiness for the first time. She was beautiful, younger than me, with perfect skin and the kind of effortless style I'd always wished I had. But it wasn't her beauty that broke me. It was the look in David's eyes, a look I hadn't seen directed at me in years, a look of complete adoration. The shower turned off. I quickly put the phone back, exactly as I'd found it, and returned to folding laundry with trembling hands, my mind racing a million miles an hour. When David walked in, towel around his waist, hair still dripping, he smiled at me, the same smile he'd given me that morning and every morning before. How could he do that? How could he look at me with such normalcy when everything had changed? "Hey, you okay?" he asked, noticing something in my expression. And that's when I made a decision that would shape everything that followed. Instead of confronting him, instead of screaming or crying or throwing things, all reactions that seemed completely justified, I smiled back. "Yeah, just tired. Long day." Because I needed time, time to process, time to plan, time to figure out who I was going to be after this moment. That night, I lay awake beside him, studying the ceiling, listening to his steady breathing, feeling the heat from his body inches away from mine. There was now an ocean between us, filled with lies and secrets and another woman's smile. I spent the next 3 days in a fog, going through the motions of our life together while carefully documenting everything. I checked credit card statements, finding hotel charges in the city on nights he'd been working late. I discovered emails about a weekend getaway planned for next month, under the guise of a business conference that didn't exist. Each discovery was another knife twist, but also strangely empowering. With each piece of evidence, my shock was replaced by clarity, my hurt transformed into resolve. On Friday, David mentioned he'd be working late again. "Big project deadline," he explained over breakfast, not quite meeting my eyes. "Don't wait up." I nodded, buttering my toast with steady hands. "No problem. I might go out with Kim anyway." He looked relieved, so relieved it was almost comical. In that moment, I realized how little he knew me anymore. The real me would have questioned, would have offered to bring him dinner, would have commented on how many late nights he'd been having lately. But the woman sitting across from him, wearing my face, my pajamas, my wedding ring, she just smiled and wished him a good day. After he left, I called in sick to work. Then I made another call, to a lawyer my friend had recommended. By noon, I had an appointment for Monday morning and a checklist of financial documents to gather. That evening, while David was with her, I went to our bank and opened a separate account. I transferred half of our savings, exactly half, not a penny more. Then I went home, poured myself a glass of wine, and called my sister. "I need a place to stay for a while," I said when she answered. There was a pause. "He finally did it, didn't he?" she asked quietly. And that's when I broke, because somehow my sister knew. She'd seen something in him, or us, that I'd been blind to. Had everyone known? Had I been the only one not seeing what was right in front of me? I spent that night packing essentials while ugly crying to Alanis Morissette. Not my proudest moment, but definitely a necessary one. When I heard his key in the lock at 11:30, earlier than I expected, I was sitting calmly at our kitchen island, 2 glasses of whiskey poured. His favourite Macallan 12, the one we saved for special occasions. The look on his face when he saw me, it wasn't guilt. It was annoyance, like I was an inconvenience. That look told me everything I needed to know about where we stood. "Sit down, David," I said, pushing one of the glasses toward him. He hesitated, then removed his jacket, the one that probably smelled like her perfume. and sat across from me. "What's going on? Why are you still up?" I slid the printed text messages across the counter. Just a few choice ones. Nothing explicit, but enough. His face went through a series of expressions: confusion, shock, anger, and finally defeat. But not regret. Never regret. "How long were you going to let this go on?" I asked, my voice steadier than I felt. He didn't answer immediately. When he did, his words knocked the wind out of me. "I was going to tell you after Jessica's wedding next month. I didn't want to ruin your cousin's day for you." As if postponing my devastation was an act of kindness. I took a sip of whiskey, letting it burn down my throat. How generous. "Look, this isn't how I wanted you to find out," he said, running his hand through his hair, a gesture I once found endearing. "Rachel and I. It just happened. I never meant to hurt you." The cliché of it all almost made me laugh. "You never meant to hurt me by sleeping with another woman for 6 months, by planning a future with her while lying to my face every day? Explain to me how that works exactly." "It's not like that," he started, then stopped, because it was exactly like that. I waited, giving him space to dig his hole deeper. He didn't disappoint. "We've been growing apart for years, Ellie. You know that. When was the last time we really talked, really connected? Rachel and I, we just understand each other." I nodded slowly. Understand each other. Over wine at Marigold, the restaurant that was too pretentious for our anniversary. He had the decency to wince at that. "I'm sorry. I should have been honest." "Yes," I agreed. "You should have." We sat in silence for a long moment, 8 years of marriage evaporating between us. Finally, I stood up. "I'll be staying at Sarah's for a while. I've already spoken to a lawyer. He'll be contacting you next week." His head snapped up. "A lawyer? Don't you think we should at least try—" "Try what, David?" "Counseling? Working through the fact that you've been living a double life, building a relationship on the ashes of the one you destroyed. What exactly should we try?" He didn't have an answer for that. I picked up my small suitcase from beside the door, where he hadn't even noticed it, and turned to look at our home one last time. The photos on the walls. The couch where we'd spent countless Sunday mornings. The kitchen where we'd danced while making dinner. "You know what hurts the most?" I said, my hand on the doorknob. "Not that you fell in love with someone else. People fall in and out of love all the time. It's that you made me feel crazy for months. Every time I sensed something was wrong and asked you about it. Every time I tried to connect with you and you pulled away. You made me think I was imagining problems that didn't exist. You stole my trust in my own intuition." I opened the door, then paused for one final thought. "I hope she's worth it. I really do. Because the man I'm looking at right now, he's not worth much at all." The cool night air hit my face as I walked to my car, and for the first time in days, I took a deep breath that didn't hurt my chest. My hands weren't shaking anymore. The world hadn't ended, even though a part of my life had. 3 months later, I was sitting across from my lawyer, finalizing the divorce settlement. Our house had sold quickly, a small mercy. The separation of our lives had been relatively clean, all things considered. No children to consider. Just 8 years of shared memories and accumulated stuff. "You could have fought for more," my lawyer commented as I signed the last document. "The circumstances—" "I got what matters," I interrupted. "A clean break, my dignity, a future without lies." That afternoon, I stood in my new apartment, smaller than our house, but filled with only my things, arranged exactly as I wanted them. My phone buzzed with a text from Sarah. "Dinner tonight to celebrate Independence Day? Yes, I know it's October. I'm being metaphorical. I smiled and texted back, absolutely. But first, I have an appointment. That appointment was at Marigold. I'd made a reservation for one at the bar, specifically requesting Rachel's section, not for confrontation or drama, but for closure. When she approached with a professional smile that faltered upon seeing me, I simply ordered a glass of wine, the same one from their receipt. Is this, are you here to cause a scene? She asked quietly, her eyes darting nervously around the restaurant. I shook my head. Just having a nice dinner. I've heard great things about this place. The confusion on her face was almost worth the price of the ridiculously expensive wine. He's all yours, I said, after taking a sip. Completely and officially as of 2 hours ago. I just wanted to see the restaurant that was worth destroying a marriage for. Then I looked around appreciatively at the elegant space. The reviews were right. It is lovely here. I stayed for the full 3-course meal, savoring each bite, leaving a generous tip, and walking out with my head held high. That night, at dinner with Sarah, I finally allowed myself to cry, not from sadness or loss, but from relief and possibility. You know, Sarah said, refilling my glass, when you called me that night, I was terrified for you, but look at you now. I raised an eyebrow. A divorced 36-year-old starting over? Real success story. She clinked her glass against mine. A woman who refused to accept less than honesty, who didn't beg a man to love her, who's rebuilding on her own terms. Yeah, I'd call that success. As we laughed and planned a trip we'd always talked about, but David had never been interested in, I realized something important. The death of my marriage wasn't the end of my story. It was just the end of a chapter. Last week, a year after finding that receipt, I ran into David at a coffee shop. He was alone, looking older somehow, less certain of himself. We made polite conversation, the weather, mutual friends, his new job. As I was leaving, he caught my arm. Ellie, I'm sorry. For everything. You deserved better. I looked at him, really looked at him, and felt nothing but a distant sadness for the years we'd spent together and the ways we'd failed each other. Yes, I agreed. I did deserve better. And now I have it. I walked out into the spring sunshine, feeling the warmth on my face and the lightness in my step. Ahead of me stretched a life I was building day by day, a life without deception or compromise or settling. A life that was completely, wonderfully, terrifyingly mine. And in case you're wondering about Rachel, last I heard, David caught her having lunch at Marigold with someone else. Karma really does have a perfect sense of irony.